Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Tony Sirianni podcast. I am thrilled to have my good friend Michael Purpura here with us. Michael, thanks for being here.
Happy to be here, as always, Tony.
Well, yeah, we it's been a little bit since we've done this, so there's just kind of a lot, going on. I always like getting your take on the marketplace, the advisor landscape and stuff like that. I mean, obviously we've got a whole bunch going on now, in the market, so that's always, of interest. But um, what are you seeing? Are you seeing that sort of all the tariff stuff and the volatility, is that hurting recruiting, or what advisors, are thinking about in terms of valuing their businesses or anything like that?
Yeah, we haven't seen it impact recruiting. It certainly is, it impacts people's psyche, but the meetings we're taking, the pipeline remains strong. I think we're pretty fortunate that markets have been extraordinarily resilient, maybe
Yeah,
shockingly resilient.
yeah.
And most of the FAs we're talking to are experienced. They've lived through a lot of these things. They believe in the resiliency of the market, and it's not really impacting their desire to have conversations or to move, Tony.
Yeah, well, I think I'm kind of hearing that across the board, that that's kind of the way things are. And I was one, I didn't think people would recruit in COVID. That's one of the few things I was wrong about. I said, no, everybody wants a handshake, but no, apparently they didn't. So it all this I think when somebody's ready, they're ready, and when they want to find a good answer, they want to find a good answer, period.
Right.
And one of the things that's been, great about DA Davidson, one of the things I really like about it, consistency, stability. So we talk about, being there through markets, constantly recruiting, but, you know, uh, what value would you place on stability these days?
Yeah, a ton. All the time I'm asked by people sort of what's new, right? What's new at Davidson? What are you doing differently? And I take a different approach, Tony, which is to say, in an ever-changing landscape, what's not new,
Yeah.
right? And at Davidson, we remain independent, employee owned. We remained a diversified firm, but our primary business is wealth management. We remain a firm that has multiple FAs that sit on the board. We remain a firm that has a bunch of capital, and are investing to support people. And to me, that's the key. And you want firms that are going to be innovative and have new things. And we
Yeah.
certainly have new stuff, new offices, new products, new services, new technology. But what's not new is the Davidson stability.
Yeah,
And
and
that's a big deal, Tony.
well, it is, and I'd like to contrast because look, I want to talk about a whole bunch of things like, the equity and ownership, but let's contrast the ownership model, the employee ownership model that you have with,
Yep.
some of the other stuff that's going on. Because I think if we started out with recruiting, you talk to advisors today, their equity ownership is part of what they're being offered, and they have to sort of, weigh that in with, remuneration for, upfronts or bonuses if they do XYZ. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, because you have a unique, I think, or let's just unpack it a little bit, the employee ownership stuff.
Yeah, to me, we've got an interesting model that's pretty unique. We are 100% employee owned. Our advisors own us.
Have been for, right, inception,
Ni
or
yeah, yeah, have been for 90 years. We're celebrating our 90th anniversary. And one of the reasons we've been able to stay independent for so long is we've been able to take a long-term outlook because of the employee ownership. We don't worry about investments returning something next quarter. We
right.
don't have to worry about a private equity firm saying, thou shalt deliver these returns. We don't
Yeah,
have to worry
it's
about
very,
the
very
public
frustrating.
markets.
I mean, when you're a public market firm, which I've worked in too, you certainly, they'll tell you no, but you certainly feel like this is being run for the quarter, for the next quarter, for the next quarter.
Right.
If you're in management, your goals change. Everything shifts like every quarter. It's not it's you don't feel like there's a long-term investment in the business.
There's no way there is. And again, we're not critiquing other models, Tony. When we sit down with people and recruit, we say, hey, this is what we like about our model.
Yeah,
And this is why we believe our models allowed us to be independent for 90 years, buy back a bunch of stock, invest a bunch in growth, and have a sustainable model. And our model, our compensation model, Tony, is all about rewarding financial advisors with equity. And
yeah.
most of our financial advisors earn equity and have built up significant positions over time. And that's a big deal. And
Well, it's a
other
way to build wealth. It's a great way to build. I mean, look, let's face it,
terrific
most
way to build
advisors,
wealth.
if you were already rich, you wouldn't get into this business. It's a tough business. It's tough to start, So our guys, my dad was a dentist. I was like one of the kids who was, okay, but you had to be a little bit hard nosed to get into it, and you have to, you're typically the first guy in your family or one of the first that sort of started to do real well, and we still know after you've been in it a while, there's a difference between you and maybe some of the voices on the other end of the phone. You have to build wealth. You have to build your enterprise value, and how many businesses can somebody get into and then do that? I mean, that's in my mind, that's the job right of the firm. You're facilitating that wealth.
Yeah, we're not only creating wealth, but I just like our model better, Tony. And again, I'm not critiquing the other models,
Yeah,
but I think for financial advisors who are trying to monetize a practice and acquire wealth and hope that someone is then going to buy out their aggregating RIA, their private equity startup, whatever it is, we all know that not all those are successful.
right.
They don't have track records, and there's so much interest in our business. You know that, Tony, that FAs need to really do their diligence and understand the equity structure and understand what the risks are. And in my opinion, we've just got a better model and been proving it for
I,
90
I,
years.
I will tell you, I've said this many times. In my opinion, it is like for advisors, it's like the cobbler's kids have no shoes. The amount of diligence that they would do for their clients, if their clients were saying, "Hey, here, I got XYZ firm for you to invest in," the advisor would say, "This is fugazi. I don't get it. Where are you doing it?"
Right,
But when they do it for themselves, you're like, okay, let's swing for the fences and see what happens. It's just, getting into the wrong. It's crazy to me that they don't ask the right questions, or maybe they don't want to show that they don't know. Like, I don't know what a waterfall is. It's okay if you don't know. You're a financial advisor. You're not doing M&A. You don't work for a private equity firm, you know.
right.
I mean, I'm concerned about that.
Well, again, I like our model. I'm concerned that not all these are going to work. It'll probably create more opportunity for those of us who run the business differently, somewhat more conservatively, somewhat more thoughtfully. But again, advisors, do your homework.
Right.
Really understand what the end game is. Really understand what the motives are of the people who are acquiring your practice or partnering with you. Because if it's purely economic, if it's, hey, we're going to sell this to a greater fool at 3x or 5x, we
Right.
just know how that game ends,
Yep. Yeah. Somebody's left holding the bag at
right?
the end of the day. And where is your equity, stand in the waterfall? Where does it stand versus the guy who's recruiting you? Is it a different type of equity? I mean, just ask the basic,
Right.
question. So, and in DA Davidson, it's, you can talk about enterprise value, build right versus um, the sort of pie in the sky potential equity, at the other places. I mean, with capital, you can invest in their businesses, right?
Yeah, and we've got a process. Tony, we're about a third owned by the ESOP. And
Yeah.
because of ESOP rules, we have different governance. So we have to go through an appraisal process twice a year to set the share price.
Oh, wow.
And there's an outside set of eyes that comes in and values things appropriately, sometimes not as highly as we'd like them to be
Well, yeah.
valued. But that gives our people another um, makes them comfortable, gives them more governance. It's not pie in the sky. It's a very disciplined process which we share with all of our shareholders. That's required because of the ESOP structure,
And
and
if
that
they want,
transparency is good.
yeah, yeah, and when they want, it comes time to retire, they can cash out their stock. Which,
They
which by the
do.
way, is another thing at some places that you can't do. You can have all the stock in the world, but if it's completely illiquid, then that's another set of problems.
That's correct.
Yeah. So, well, I think I think the ESOP model is just very interesting. And the other thing you will do because you have capital, if an advisor does want to, because look, on the equity side, the typical RIA with capital, with cash coming in, they want to spend it. You'll help somebody acquire a book too, right? If they see something that they like to help build their practice, or even internally, right? Help facilitate those.
Both. We do those deals all the time. It's not uncommon for recruits who we're bringing over that they want to spend their last 3, 4, 5 years somewhere where they're a little happier.
Yeah.
And we facilitate both sides of it, just like our peers do, just like the rest of the industry does, and always happy to facilitate that, Tony.
And that's something old, but something new that you and I were talking the other day, and we talked about some of the high net worth stuff that you guys are doing. I think that's really interesting. I don't know that everybody says, "Oh, Davidson, yeah, high net worth," that's necessarily the leap they make. But fact is, if I'm a wirehouse advisor with a sophisticated practice, I'm comfortable at Davidson.
Yeah, we've not had a problem attracting, the last 24 months, we've attracted our 3 or 4 largest teams to Davidson, and they are more sophisticated. And a couple things, Tony, we've rolled out an ultra high net worth offering in order to support those more sophisticated cases, both from a planning and service perspective. We've had a lot of our financial advisors win business
Yeah.
purely on their own, Tony, based on charm, based on the relationship. And we just looked at each other and said, we've got to do a better job of supporting it. It's never going to be our core business, but we're running into more and more big accounts, big relationships. So we rolled out what we call Davidson Private Wealth, which is run by a guy named Brian Halloran, who used to be an advisor.
Yeah.
So pretty unique that someone with that experience is there. And he's developed a much more sophisticated planning model that helps our people compete. The FAs still run it. They still
But,
control it.
in a situation like that, though, it does lift all boats, right? Because even if I have a standard book, 100 million bucks, and you got that $10 million client, or a client with five
Right.
million that's got $30 million somewhere else. You know what I mean? So you got that. You want to have the support on that stuff because maybe you can win that business, and you feel like you have the ascendant relationship with that client.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Everybody has those clients.
Yeah,
Sometimes
they
they
do.
don't want to admit it, but
Yeah.
they have them. And there's an opportunity to go get more money, but more importantly, just give them better service,
Well,
right?
isn't that what you
That's what
think?
we're
I
here
mean,
to do.
right. You would say, is this guy better off with me or with, Joe over at some other place? Yeah, you would think always that they're better off with you,
Right.
right?
And one of the things, Tony, that Ryan and the private worth group has done, we own a trust company.
Mhm.
We've owned a trust company, a nationally chartered trust company for over 40 years. And the ability to partner the trust company with Davidson Private Wealth is very powerful. You're not talking about one of 4 outsourced solutions or one of one outsourced solution. These people are Davidson employees who work at the firm. We own the trust company. And when you're dealing with high net worth cases where trusts are going to come into place, the FA has just a really high level of confidence that the relationship is going to be strong, as opposed to going to a third party in
Oh yeah.
Detroit or
Oh, well,
Dallas
no,
or
it's
wherever.
an enormous resource source. Well, the other thing a trust company does is, they're pecking at your client all day. They want to take the investment business away from them. So having it in-house is critical.
Yeah,
Critical.
and we allow Tony. What the game changer for us was when we brought in an individual who had 2 things: an open mind and high net worth experience. He had helped run a family office. So putting him in charge of the trust company, he had the right perspective. And he rolled out a program where the financial advisors continue to manage the money, right? So they continue to manage the money through discretionary programs. So
Yeah.
again, the FA, whether it's Davidson Private Wealth or whether it's the trust company, the FA is still in charge. And that's how we've run the business. And even at the high net worth level, you can still have the FA in charge if you surround them with the right resources to help them.
Yeah, I mean it's another differentiator as well between some of the pie in the sky equity firms that just don't have the scale or the
Right.
services. Well, speaking of scale and services, so the other thing I would say, if there's a ding on Davidson or a guy coming to any kind of regional firm, one would be sophistication of offerings, right? We just talked about that. And the other would be technology. And there's going to be a diminution in technology if I go, to a regional firm or an independent firm or anything like that.
Yep.
Um, what are you guys doing around? And we can talk about AI too. I do want to talk about it, but just in general, from just practice management, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Tech stack.
Maybe a couple observations. One, we're only a regional firm if the region's North America,
Right, right. You are
right?
all over the
When
country.
we opened in Richmond 2 weeks ago, it was the 88th office for wealth management,
Yeah.
114th for the firm. We're nationwide.
No, it's
So
interesting. You are nationwide. I worked for Legg Mason and loved it. And
right.
it was about 100 offices, 100, I think 120 offices by the time uh, it blew up, went away. But that was a great firm run by great people. And I kind of use, well, I think all these terms are interchangeable. I mean, I put you in this independent ethos that you share with a lot of firms, including, Stiefel and whatever else. But yeah, the footprint now, Legg Mason was up and down the East Coast. You guys are national. A lot on the West Coast, obviously, a lot in the West, and it's good to see on the East Coast.
Yeah, and I don't view regional as a pejorative term, but
No,
I
no,
still
no,
want
either.
to your point that you were making with regard to Davidson. I think people don't appreciate how big it is,
Yeah.
how sophisticated it is, the offerings that we have, the capital that we have, all those things. I think people are surprised by when they come and talk to us,
And
and
asset management, very large asset management manager firm.
very large. 80% of our business is asset management. The largest businesses within asset management are FA driven. So
Yeah.
again, you get the theme there about sort of FA driven
Like I
business.
said, I was Legg Mason. We did a lot of the same,
Yeah,
chewed on the same dirt. It was
very, very similar. With regard specifically to technology, the recruits who've come on board have been very surprised, pleasantly surprised, at how sophisticated the technology is. We've got a long ways to go to meet my objective.
yeah,
We got a CEO who committed about a year ago and said, Michael, hire a head of digital, firm, hire a head of AI. We are going to make a commitment to delivering a more efficient experience for our advisors through technology and through reviewing our policies and procedures. And we're about 9 months into it, Tony,
yeah.
and I am very pleased with where we're headed.
So where do you
Um,
see where do you see AI going? I mean, obviously it's a touch point for a lot of people. There are efficiencies that are obvious, right? With AI. I'm not somebody who says that it's all, fun and games. I think it's a possibly a competitor. So you really need to sort of this is not, robo advising was a joke, right? This is I think less of a joke as we go forward. You got to use the last guy using this is going to be holding a buggy whip, right?
Yeah, I mean, for us, listen, we're going to build systems and AI that enable the advisor, that don't replace the advisor. I'm convinced that there's tons of efficiencies that can be driven through technology and artificial intelligence. I think the adoption is going to be slower than people think, not just in our industry, but
No, I agree.
across the board. And again, we're going to take a deliberate approach to it by hiring somebody to run AI, to set up governance, and to make sure that we've identified the most appropriate use cases. At Davidson, our initial AI engagement to help advisors is really going to be based in existing platforms. So
Yes.
existing vendors who are using it as opposed to us overlaying it. I'm excited about the efficiency. On your other point, Tony, I used to make fun of them. Initially, they were robo allocators. They
Right.
were not robo advisors, right? You plugged in a series of information, it spit out an asset allocation and a series of funds. It's going to be a competitor
Yeah.
where it's providing more than simply asset allocation. But you think
Well,
about
advisors got to kick up the service, right? You've got to kick
yes.
up the human element and all that in order to, make the positive comparison. Which, by the way, brings up another point. I don't want to cut you off with that, but um, we are limited time. But the service brings me back to you look at what's going on now. Commonwealth, they pride themselves on service. I've never met a jerk from DA Davidson. I've never met anybody who wasn't really nice. I've never spoken to anybody on the phone there who wasn't really nice. And that's got to blow people away when they first, because if things don't work out, I mean, you get a live person at Davidson and somebody who cares. I mean, it's really impressive.
Well, thank you. We do pride ourselves in that. We can still be nice, but be competitive.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can still be nice and be sophisticated. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. And when recruits come and visit me and the team in Seattle, they are universally surprised that we've attracted such sophisticated people in planning and managed assets and practice management. These people could work anywhere.
Yeah.
And they choose to work here because it's nice. But that doesn't mean we aren't going to compete, Tony.
Of
Doesn't
course.
mean we're not sophisticated. And
Well,
there's been a in the public, I think there's been a bit of a disconnect between those things. And
it's
we're
just
we're gonna
eye-opening.
we're gonna fix that.
Yeah, it's just eye-opening. I think when you come from a place that, I think if you're sitting in a wire or a large bank, you put up with a lot. And you put up a lot, and your rationale is, I have the most sophisticated products, I'm getting good technology, but you put up with a lot of crap. And it's like, okay, well, imagine if I didn't have to put up with that. I think that's a motivating factor for people to leave. And when your eyes are really open, I think when you say, hey, look, there's capital here, there's sophisticated, I can do my business and also not have to be treated like a dirt.
And all the time, Tony, again, I want to get back to this technology piece. While we're committed to making it better, we have recruits from bigger firms who come over and say, you know what? This meets 98% of what I need. In
Yeah,
some ways, it's better. In some ways, it's more integrated. So, got a long ways to go. I'm pushing our team very hard to get better, but we don't take a backseat to many people when it comes to the technology piece.
that's great. All right, I would call that a high note, Mike. So I would end on that. Did I miss anything? Anything else you wanted to say? You let me know.
No, again, I would just maybe I'd close the same way I do every time, which is thanking you for doing what you do. I appreciate your support and recognition of the national firms that aren't by a bank or based in New York. And what we do, what our advisors do, not just at DA Davidson, but at other firms is noble. It's important. And the more we can talk positively about the industry and about advisors, that's a good thing. And I just want to, on behalf of everybody at Davidson, thank you for doing that in your efforts.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.